A far-right activist called Samuel Melia has been found guilty of inciting racial hatred by running an online library of downloadable anti-immigration stickers. He was found guilty at Leeds Crown Court of encouraging racially aggravated criminal damage and will be sentenced on March the 1st. Melia was the head of a group responsible for the downloading of stickers, putting them up in the local area, which prosecutors said was intended to stir up racial hatred. Melia claimed the so-called practice of stickering was prevalent and it did not occur to him that it might be criminal. So here's to discuss this, the deputy editor of Spiked, Fraser Myers. Fraser, so this guy, Samuel Melia, he had a poster of Adolf Hitler in his house.
Yeah.
He put out stickers talking about, well, I suppose they were white nationalist stickers, weren't they?
Yeah, some very, quite hateful and grotesque messages on there saying things like Labour loves Muslim rape gangs, mass immigration is white genocide, telling people to go home if they're fourth, fifth generation black. So, this is not a nice person, and he certainly has a very not nice message.
But isn't this the issue with free speech, that even people who we don't consider very nice are allowed their free speech?
Absolutely. That is the test of free speech. If you don't defend the freedom for the thought you hate, then you don't really believe in free speech at all. You're talking about me speech,
yes,
not free speech. And actually, it's been our failure to defend a lot of these hard cases, the racists, the bigots, the scumbags, that has allowed censorship to spread in the way that it has, because I'm sure people watching this show will be familiar with the fact that you do not need to be, a racist or a far-right activist to have your collar felt by the police these days. You can simply believe that, say,
Absolutely.
women don't have penises.
But, I mean, also, in terms of this case, I found it very confusing. I wasn't aware that having a poster of Adolf Hitler was illegal, or having a book by, what did he have?
He had a book by Oswald Mosley.
Well, that's not illegal either.
It's not illegal, but it was used to bolster the case that this was a far-right individual. It was a very strange case because the prosecutor said, and I thought this is an Orwellian thing to say, they said, we're not going after you for your political beliefs. But the case hinged on his political beliefs and, of course, on the things that he was saying. Not only was it the message that he was saying, but it was also the fact he was charged with racially aggravated criminal damage. Now, the implication was that not only, he had put up a few stickers, but that other people could download his stickers and they could therefore also be committing criminal damage.
Wait, well, so isn't that saying that it's about criminal damage that might happen in the future based on something you've done?
Yes, that you could be encouraging it by simply printing out stickers. Now, again, that has all kinds of horrifying implications. If you go to any political protest, people will give out stickers for you to probably put up on your way home. That's quite a normal form of political protest.
Yes.
And he isn't the first to get in trouble with the law for stickering. A couple of years ago, police in Merseyside, said they were looking for feminists who had put up stickers saying your women don't have penises. There's a woman at the moment in a battle with Fulham and Hammersmith Council who's been given what's called a community protection notice. It's like a kind of modern form of ASBO because she put up stickers on her own front door.
Yes.
And she's been told, and she doesn't want to remove them. So stickers are become the unlikely new grounds or new battleground for free speech.
Yes, so what does this kind of ruling, what kind of precedent does this set? Isn't this quite worrying?
I think it's deeply worrying. Any ruling that says, you're not allowed to say X, Y, Z, anything, no matter how harsh or horrible the message might be, sends a deeply troubling message. It sends, to the next cases that actually the net can only get wider, if you know what I mean, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, and we've discussed on this show before the woman who went to prison for anti-Semitic satirical songs.
Yeah.
For instance, Alison Chabloz, I think her name was.
Yeah.
And we've also discussed the Grenfell, the mock-up, which was burnt in the back garden, which, as a sick joke.
Yeah.
These things aren't nice.
No.
These things aren't pleasant. But once we start criminalising it, it's a dark path.
Absolutely. And, if you criminalise speech, if you criminalise nasty speech in particular, you only push it underground. What you need to defeat these ideas, to defeat racism, is to have arguments about them in public. You want to be able to discredit these people and their ideas. That becomes more difficult with censorship, not less difficult. And you gave the example of Alison Chabloz. She wrote these songs that are denying the Holocaust. Now, this is particularly interesting because we don't have a law against Holocaust denial in this country, and yet she was prosecuted under malicious communication laws. You see lots of places in Europe where Holocaust denial is banned. They have a much bigger problem with Holocaust denial than we do because, again, it's spread underground, it's not said out in the open, and so people don't hear the rebuttals. They speak among themselves, but they don't actually hear the rebuttals.
Very interesting example. I wanted to raise another issue that came up this week in the courts, which was the Lawrence Fox situation. Now, you know what's happened here. Could perhaps give us a bit of a précis.
Yeah, so this is another troubling case where Lawrence Fox has successfully been sued for libel because, essentially for a rhetorical flourish. I mean, again, this is not big or clever, this is not Jonathan Swift-level satire, but he responded to people calling him racist by calling them paedophiles.
Yes.
Basically, his argument was that, you know, if you're going to call me a racist with no grounds, I'll call you a paedophile. I'm as much a racist as you are a paedophile.
Yes.
And the judge took the extraordinary view that because he couldn't prove that they were paedophiles, which is not something he'd set out to do, that he was committing libel, that he was defaming them, and that there could be no defence for his case.
So, look, I find that very disturbing, and the reason is that it was perfectly obvious the point he was trying to make.
Yeah.
He's making the point that you can't just throw around unfounded, very serious accusations, and therefore he was going to replicate the point right back at them. It needn't have been paedophile. He could have said anything, or you sleep with goats, or whatever, you know.
Exactly. And to even ram home that point, he actually used the exact same wording as one of his accusers had used against him.
Yes.
You know, she said that he was, you know, publicly and obviously and so, you know, a racist, and he used the exact same thing back at her. So it's obvious to everyone, apart from High Court judges, apparently.
OK, so that's the problem, isn't it? Because if it is obvious to everyone, how do we get this ruling? Because it would suggest that the High Court judge, in this particular case, does not understand what absolutely everyone clearly understands. It's not possible, I think, to interpret it in the way the judge is saying it's possible.
I think there is just an extreme literal-mindedness often when,
Really?
you know, when these cases come to court and they're removed from the context, you know, out of the rough and tumble of Twitter and the internet. It's not a nice place. People are rude to each other. And then you read these things out in the courtroom in the cold light of day, they sound a bit different.
Yes.
But it's often something that happens. There was another troubling aspect to the case as well. So Lawrence Fox countersued his accusers, saying, you know, you've defamed me by calling me racist. And they said that's not even something they could rule on. They didn't say you're right to call him racist, so it's not defamation. They said, we can't judge that. It can't be libelous. So essentially you have a green light, potentially, to call people racist, to defame them as racist, but you can't defame them as a paedophile. I'm not entirely sure how that is going to work going forward.
So if this had been reversed and they'd called him a paedophile and he called them a racist, then what would the ruling have been then?
Presumably the ruling would have been completely the other way around. But then again, you know, would they have ruled in Lawrence Fox's favour is another question.
Well, look, I mean, I'm not denying the sincerity of the judge or anyone involved in the procedure. I just find it baffling that you can't see what is obviously a satirical statement.
And this is the problem with the UK's libel laws. Actually, in the US, the First Amendment explicitly defends, you know, hyperbole, extreme rhetoric, and Supreme Court justices have made the point that actually that adds to national life, the fact that people can make extreme statements that everyone knows are not true in order to ram home a point. That's just classic rhetoric. That's how people make
But the problem we now have is people are going to start using the term racist with more, and it's already being used so promiscuously it doesn't mean anything.
Absolutely, it's lost all meaning. You know, everyone is now called a racist. You know, people who voted for Brexit are called a racist, whereas actually, you know, it's a word that should be used for the types of people like Sam Mellier, who is, you know, calling for Black Britons to be deported.
Right.
That's who it should be reserved for, but it's now lost its currency.
Very troubling stuff, Fraser, but thanks ever so much for coming to talk to us about it.
Thank you.